Good day, this is Let's Play Eternal Daughter Episode 6. I'm your host, Master Goffrin, and this time I'll be showing you that there are some, let's say, limitations to the collision engine in the game. Anyway, here we are in the Dungaga Mines. This first section is a gauntlet of bats and golems. As before, you can duck underneath the bats, however with the attack swing it's much safer to just kill them, especially since there's about 6 floors of this. Of course, they mix up that formula at the end here with a bat you can't duck underneath. The white pile below us here is the first new foe this episode, the skeleton. He pops up when you get nearby and slowly walks around, stopping occasionally to shoot a rib bone at you. When you kill them, they explode into 4 more rib bones, which will occasionally catch you out. Like the frogs, they have long invincibility frames which telegraph their attacks fairly well. However, their attack frequency is very close to how often you can jump and swing, so if they run you off of a platform they can be difficult to get rid of. Washing away any doubt there might have been that these weren't the Dungaga Mines, we meet an iron dragon ready to swoop down to get us. There's also Mia's portrait on the bulletin board. Starting in this area, we get random bats that fly in to get Mia. They make the bat flapping noise when they spawn, but they fly in from the edge of the map page rather than from the edge of the screen. Because of that, it can be quite a few seconds before they actually show up. Down past this repeat of the design from the entrance, we'll find a save point. This save point is kind of a jerk. You can just about manage to get here okay when you're exploring the mines by accident after leaving the forest for the first time. Getting out of the mines is a much harder prospect than getting in, so you're kind of stuffed if you overwrote your save. This small tunnel with the blue blocks is a fairly good indicator that this is the way to go to progress, so instead we're going to poke around the mines a bit more. There isn't really much else around in this particular map, other than the area we couldn't get up to in the upper right corner. I'm not exactly sure what we'll need to get up to it, so I'm not sure how long it'll be before we're supposed to be able to get up there. The drop off leads down to this area here, so if you run off blindly it's pretty easy to waltz into the golem. Otherwise, this particular tile has a preponderance of exits. This one here takes us to a new part of the previous map, and while there's not too much going on there either, it does have a shaft that leads down to a new area. Sadly, we can't jump high enough to see the statues' faces. So according to Effendu, we're not ready for the trial yet. Also, he has an amazing beard. This way therefore is a dead end for now, so the only other way to go, as far as exploring is concerned, is deeper down into the ground. Of course, stopping off at the save point to refill our health. The bottom right of this area doesn't go anywhere, but it is the only way back up for now, so it's worth keeping in mind. The bottom left though yields another cave to explore. There's another one of those shafts here, and this time it's mostly full of bats. It's definitely still worth ducking underneath them sometimes, since occasionally they throw 2 at once at you. This last one can be a bit inconvenient, so if you're coming here early you can pick it off with a dagger. One downside of the wall jump is that getting out of water can be a little tougher than it used to be, although in this case there's no real point as there's nothing up here. Below us though there are some more blue blocks, this time they only conceal power-ups, but this can be a big help. You can't really change your horizontal speed once you're in water, so you can make use of the wall jump to accelerate your egress. The bats I get hit by here do 3 damage rather than the 2 damage that they were doing last episode. That genuinely surprised me, as I was running with the theory that each enemy was given global events which handled all of their interaction with Mia, making it much harder to change what happens on a per area basis. It's not obvious from how the game plays, but each map area is a unique snowflake capable of playing entirely differently from the last. In MMF, code is either global or unique, and duplicating and maintaining events across 50 areas would be insane. At a guess, I think that means that there's 2 different but functionally identical bats, one doing 2 damage, one doing 3. That's a sound we haven't heard before, and we haven't seen one of those before either, so it must be new enemy time. Here we face off against the Mandibula. They look rather a lot like evil tomatoes. They pretty much just float around and try and get to you. They can either be pre-spawned or summoned in by this guy, the Red Fox. That's pretty much the whole story for both of them, except that these guys both do 4 damage per hit, and though I wasn't able to show it, the Mandibula died to a single hammer. Anyway, we found some dead Dungaga and a not quite so dead green thing named Prador. Well, sadly, it seems he's died of his wounds. However, he did tell us to take the bracken from the hovar behind him, so let's do that. And there we go, the double jump. You'll be glad to see that it's a full-on double jump, so it really allows much greater mobility as well as access to new areas. Of course, due to the story-driven nature of the game, most of those areas are walled off by plot at this point. As for optional upgrades, I think there's only actually the one we saw in Blue Mountain last time, although you can also bounce off of an enemy to get up to another one that we saw in the upper left area of Lorien Forest. You also need both the wall and double jump to get the attack upgrade I've mentioned several times, and I'll show that one off when we're done with the caves. Another move that Mia has had all this time is the forward flip, which she does if you hit down when jumping. It doesn't actually do anything other than look cool, and I usually end up doing it by accident. Besides, we're now done with the Dungaga Mines, and we're going to have to head all the way back up to that blocked off area. Spooking the bats into moving can take a while, so I threw a few of my excess hammers into them. Ascending through these long vertical shafts is really kind of a pain, and getting down to the double jump is no cakewalk, so spending a little ammo is a reasonable precaution. Fortunately, we're already back in this area, and all that's left is to get back up to the save point. I think you might actually be able to get up the other way if you have the double jump, but instead I mess up a bunch and end up walking into some golems. It's also worth noting that the wall jump stops your second jump from working, and actually that fairly heavily limits how far you can get horizontally after you wall jump, so it's going to be pretty obvious if you can make use of it to get anywhere. Trying to dodge this bullet makes me end up dropping onto this golem, so I'm really glad I had the health to spare. Anyhow, we're done here, so on to what is hopefully the Grodol Caves. Well, it's green, and if we assume Prador was a Grodol, then that's a good match. As you can hear and see, there's bats and mandibulas here. There's also the slimes. They're not really worth fighting, they usually attack before you can get all 3 of your attacks off to kill them. Otherwise, they just move horizontally and make spikes at you. And well, I died here. While I could have covered it up with some editing, it amused me to leave it in, particularly because if I'd gone back to get that 10th hit point I said I would be okay without, I probably would have been fine. Anyway, I won the rematch, and you can see that the red foxes can have their summoning interrupted with a few hits, so you can safely take your time when dealing with them. Using the hammer to one-shot mandibulas coming in from above you is also very useful, especially since I think that unlike most enemies, the red fox are active in creating them when they're off screen, that or they're pre-placed to make it appear that way. Sadly, there's not really any good way to deal with them when they're below you, but that's a pretty rare occurrence even in this area. Here we have another green chap, this time he's a nameless Grodol, however he's also Gideon from earlier, apparently. I'm pretty sure this is a bug, but I'll take any anklets I can get. Either way, at least we know we're in the right area. It seems that all Grodols speak with an unfamiliar tongue. Gar had an accent which was transcribed into his text, but all the other Dungaga and the rest of the cast that we've seen have otherwise spoken normally. I think we can say that this one was basically saying no entry, so we can probably come back here later once we're all good friends. Anyway, this is actually all of the enemies for this area, since the skeletons and bats are reused from the previous one. Since I didn't get hit by them before, and apparently it pays to check, the slimes do 4 damage, following the rule of thumb. The cave ahead here has a red fox and some mandibulars, but most importantly it has a life upgrade, bringing us up to 10 and restoring our life, which this time is actually a nice perk, since there's no save points in sight. Regarding the Grodol, one of Derek Yu's later games, Aquaria, also had an element of learning a language, and that there's symbols which correspond directly with English letters, and there was a little extra story to be absorbed through reading inscriptions once you learnt to translate them. I'm not sure if that was his influence, but at least there's a similar kind of mechanic here. The Grodol's unfamiliar words pretty much correspond directly to an English equivalent, and by examining the context and subjects of what they say when they talk to you, you can pick up the meaning of quite a few of their words. Obviously we don't have too much to go on right now, but that'll change as we progress with the game. It's pretty easy to get the gist of what they're saying, but I've not actually spent any time translating everything they say, to see if there's any Easter eggs or foreshadowing, so now seems like a good time to do that. After a bit of a close call here, we're finally through to the end of the caves, and not a moment too soon. These caves are amazingly brutal, and I'm honestly surprised I only died once. Anyway, it seems we found the Grodol, though let's just check that. Okay, we're good, so next time we'll see if they'll join forces with us under Shulin. See you then!